Program Director, transport is a crucial driver of economic growth. As a result, it plays an essential role in poverty reduction. The transport industry helps to facilitate the movement of goods and services at municipal, provincial, national, regional, and global levels, which in turn helps to promote and strengthen economic growth. I therefore welcome with appreciation the opportunity to make the opening remarks on the occasion of the ministerial briefing on mitigating the impact of COVID-19 pandemic on the transport industry. This ministerial briefing has been organized in order to equip us as the public representatives with information so as to be able to fully understand the impact of COVID-19 pandemic on the country. The information should assist us, firstly, to assess the implementation of the measures put in place in terms of the Disaster Management Act and their effect. And secondly, to assist us to assess what is required to achieve government's commitment of turning the country's economy around. As members are aware, the national global response to the spread of the coronavirus required the implementation of measures that were intended to prevent infection and to slow transmission. These included the observance of hygiene etiquette, social distancing rules, implementation of community containment measures, and the lockdown strategy. In the case of South Africa's transport industry, the Minister of Transport was required to issue directions in accordance with the regulations made under the Disaster Management Act of 2020. These directions were in respect of domestic air travel, rail bus services, taxi services, e-hailing services, and private vehicles. The minister was also required to set out the health protocols that must be adhered to and steps that to be followed for the limitation of the exposure to the virus of members of the public when using public transport. Given the nature of these interventions, it was unavoidable that the COVID-19 pandemic would cause untold damage to the transport sector. It is reported that at the height of the pandemic, the transport industry suffered an unprecedented fall in passenger numbers and between 60% and 90% global. It is still not clear how this sector will fully recover from such a huge and devastating impact. Needless to say, our governments rely on the transport infrastructure as the means to accelerate economic recovery and growth. In the case of South Africa, such economic recovery must take into account the fact that the National Development Plan regards transport as an enabler for economic development. As a consequence, it makes the following assumptions. Quote, moving towards 2030, South Africa's transport system will support economic development, job creation, and growth, provide equitable access to opportunities and services for all, and reducing poverty. Emphasis will be placed on total system efficiency to maximize the strengths of different modes, cut inefficiencies, and reduce disparities with the least environmental, social, and economic cost, close quote. Towards this end, the Department of Transport has sought to provide a policy framework regulation, and implementation models in the following areas. Point, ensuring competitive transport cost. Point, safety and security improvement. Point, reducing infrastructure backlogs. Point, improving access. And point, and reduce time in transit. It is therefore important for us as the public representatives who are charged with the constitutional duty to oversee the executive in the different spheres of government, to be apprised of the extent to which the COVID-19 pandemic would impact the pursuit of these goals. In the same breath, it is worth noting that infrastructure investment and deliver is one of the priority interventions of the country's economic reconstruction and recovery plan. The plan, which was unveiled by the President of the Republic to a joint sitting of Parliament in October last year, sets out a reconstruction and recovery plan for the South African economy that is aimed at stimulating equitable and inclusive growth. The plan points out that as part of prioritizing infrastructure development for network industries, the modernization of freight and public transport will receive immediate attention. This will include the implementation of the following: reversing delays in metro rail modernization, including prioritizing the refurbishment of the Mopane line in Tshwane and the Central line in Cape Town, ensuring improved efficiencies at ports of entry, protecting passenger and flight infrastructure from vandalism, arson, and other crimes, and fast-tracking the approved integrated public transport networks in 5 cities, providing support to the taxi industry, the development of the smaller harbors project, and the rollout of a labor-intensive rural roads asset network using alternative technologies as well as local supply and value chains. This reinforces the fact that transport is an important tool for development and the transformation of our society. Therefore, the transport industry is critical in the realization of the principle contained in the Freedom Charter that, quote, the people shall share in the country's wealth, close quote. Given the fact that economic activities cannot take place without the infrastructure base, the transport sector provides the necessary wheels for the building of a more equal society in which all can find decent work and enjoy a sustainable livelihood. Program Director, I wish to thank you for affording me this opportunity to make these opening remarks. I'm looking forward to the deepening of the conversation on matters that are germane to the goal of achieving accelerated economic growth in spite of the challenges and circumstances we continue to face. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chairperson of the NCOP, for that opening remarks. And once again, confirming that everyone is welcome. We will now give the Honorable Minister Fikile April-Mbalula an opportunity to do the ministerial briefing on the specific topic that have been chosen today. Over to you, Honorable Mbalula.
Thank you, Chairperson. We are faced with challenges of load shedding where I am. I hope the electricity will come back. Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, Honorable Masondo, Deputy Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, Honorable Sylvia Lucas, members of the Executive Councils responsible for transport from all our provinces, honorable members of the National Council of Provinces, ladies and gentlemen, in March 2020, President Ramaphosa declared a national state of disaster, leading to a hard lockdown that was followed by easing of restrictions as the country navigated through different alert levels. The economic impact of these restrictions was unprecedented, with the transport sector being one of those who bore the brunt of the pandemic. South Africa borders 6 other nations, 4 of which are landlocked, and is the largest economy in Southern Africa. As such, we have the potential to fully utilize our geographical position and develop to become an important regional transport and logistical hub. However, to fulfill this role, we'll need to develop efficient, resilient, and sustainable transport infrastructure that facilitates both domestic and cross-border trade and transportation, boosting both our own economic growth and that of our neighbors. The fulfillment of this potential is currently constrained by South Africa's relatively poor connectivity with regional and global markets. The poor connectivity between rural production areas and urban markets, and crucially within the greater urban areas themselves. In addition, resource availability is increasingly limited, and current resource use is suboptimal on a number of levels. It is crucial for us to plan and develop our transport system in an integrated, sustainable, resilient, and low-carbon manner. Transport is the backbone of the economy. From local public transport to global supply chains. The transport brings opportunities for the poor, and it enables economies to be competitive, links producers to markets, workers to jobs, students to schools, and the sick to hospitals. The loss of revenue during the lockdown for the various transport subsectors presents an economic challenge as transport operators experienced an unexpected shortfall in their revenues. Operations in aviation came to a complete halt as we closed the airspace to both domestic and international level travel, except for repatriation and medical evacuations. This led to airline operators that were already under financial distress, such as the South African Airways and ComAir, to go into full business rescue. Public transport operators, specifically taxis and buses, faced reduced demand as their operating hours and passenger capacity were restricted. A large portion of the freight logistics activity was also halted, as only transportation of essential items was permitted during the hard lockdown. All these measures adversely affected the income of both employers and employees operating in the transport and logistics sectors. In contrast, the hard lockdown might have increased the demand for storage facilities as on the boundaries of domestic trade, as it plays an important role in unlocking investments in the entire SADC region. The COVID-19 pandemic came at a time when economic activity in the transport, storage, and logistic industries was already on a downward slide since 2016. The sector's output performance mirrors the country's GDP performance, as volumes in these industries are highly dependent on the output of the overall economy. The effects of the COVID-19 pandemic will
just sign it.
I've already got that one signed.
Oh,
That's
okay.
one that we've already signed for.
Oh,
I don't know what's happening. Can we just allow the minister to continue with his presentation? You may continue, Minister, if the problem is not from your side.
No, it's not from my side. Malone, Uno. Some honorable.
Sorry about the disturbance.
Okay. The effects of the COVID-19 pandemic will continue to be experienced by operators in the transport and logistic industries in the short to medium term. Demand for airlines will continue to be low until volumes in business and tourism travel picks up. It is estimated that it could take up to 2 years before the operations are back to normal, as it is expected that passengers will be reluctant to fly initially because of stringent rules in place and until they gain confidence in the measures applied. The International Air Transport Association projected that global airline industry will lose approximately 82 billion in 2020. Similarly, airports are in a dilemma of ensuring that infrastructure is maintained and developed to support operations. Operators are now required to rethink their business models, given diminished activity and the new added elements in the system, further burdening the operations of airports and airlines. The issue of social distancing already impacts on space requirements of airports, which may lead to constraints in terms of capacity. This is expected to be a new norm until vaccination efforts achieve population immunity. This might likely lead to increasing fares to make up for operational costs and liquidity, as well as downscaling of operations to meet the new demand. Post-hard lockdown, passenger capacity in all public transport modes continue to be restricted as one of the risk-adjusted measures. Restrictions on passenger capacity for long-distance travel, coupled with fixed costs, continues to adversely affect the earnings of operators. And sections of the taxi industry were resorting to increasing taxi fares by more than 100%. The COVID-19 pandemic has dealt a blow, a massive blow, to the global economy. On the supply side, businesses have been forced to temporarily close due to the shortage of input material from suppliers and the need to protect workers. Demand for goods have also declined as consumers and households face financial constraints. This will continue to affect industrial output in the short term to medium term. This confluences of supply and demand shocks have put considerable strain on the logistics sector. The decrease in cargo volumes is threatening the viability of many logistics companies. Fixed investments in the transport and logistic industries experienced decent growth rates between 1994 and 2015. The sector was showing at an average annual rate of approximately 9% during the 94 to 2015 period. Post-2015, investments in the sector has been notably muted. The COVID-19 pandemic will have a severe impact on the fixed investment in the transport and logistics sector in the short to medium term. In the aviation industry, capital that could have been used to expand the sector will be utilized to rescue airline operators that are facing bankruptcy, while airline operators with strong balance sheets might withhold their capital expenditure program to fulfill their liquidity needs. Freight and logistics will likely experience consolidation as large operators with strong balance sheets acquire operators in financial distress. Where public transport is concerned, the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic may bring about the necessary long-term transformation the sector so desperately needs. One of the most impactful outcomes of the current challenges triggered by the pandemic is the realization that public transport is an essential service that requires the necessary investment and adequate funding both for infrastructure and operations. Employment levels in the transport industry have been on the rise since 2008. The number of jobs in the sector experienced an average annual growth of approximately 2% during 2008 to 2019 period. However, between the first quarter of 2019 and the first quarter of 2020, the sector shed approximately 30,000 jobs. This might continue if the aggregate economic activity fails to rebound quickly. In the aviation industry, severe job losses are expected as Comair and SAA have announced retrenchments. Once these airlines emerge from the business rescue hurdle, the new rescued airlines will likely be leaner with fewer employees. Other airline operators are also likely to shed jobs until volumes or demand in business and tourism travel rebounds significantly. This rebound may be later than initially projected by the International Air Transport Association. However, in the short term, operators will be faced with rising fixed costs due to lower utilization of aircraft and seats as a result of restrictions. The severity of job losses in the freight and logistic industry are highly dependent on the rebound of manufacturing, mining, and trade activity. Transport and logistic industries are the engine of the economy. However, their activities are highly dependent on productivity from other sectors, especially mining and manufacturing. 80% to 90% of South Africa's trade cargo is transported by sea, which is currently fully operational. However, the rise in shipment volumes is dependent on manufacturing and mining output and demand for exports and imports by South Africa's trading partners. Ultimately, the recovery of the freight and logistics industry will be linear to the recovery of the domestic demand and global trade activity. For our transport systems, the post-COVID-19 new normal will unfold in ways we cannot fully imagine, but it will be impacted by, among others, other shifts: high hygiene standards and lower occupancy numbers on public transport, particularly the largest segment being the minibus taxi industry. A shift for white-collar workers from commuting to more work from home via technology platforms, shifting demand patterns for use of road networks, more regionalization of economies and shortening of supply chains, and better rapid response abilities through more decentralization and modularization, with important implications for demand, freight, and logistics sector. In the South African context, this includes the regional integration at a continental level through the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. A strong move towards a 24-hour economy as we try to reduce congestion in all areas, again with implication for our road network, public transport, and freight logistics sectors. The proposed package of transport sector interventions will build on synergies and interventions that will create socio-economic and intra-Africa trade improvements. We need to revamp up domestic travel and build confidence that the system is able to function safely. The measures which are applied must demonstrate that the aviation system is resilient and can be trusted. Elements to intensify on include touchless travel, disinfection processes, screening of passengers, compulsory wearing of mask, sanitization, and social distancing. We need to relax restrictions, which goes hand in hand with tourism and restrictions relaxation. We must gradually reintroduce international travel with countries that are low risk. We must consider differentiated financial aid for the air traffic navigation systems. In public transport, we must introduce a cashless fare system by installing smart card validators in the vehicles, and these devices should be locally manufactured instead of relying on global supply. We must aggressively invest in the taxi economy. The minibus taxi economy represents a vast and largely underdeveloped economic network. 70% of commuters use public transport. 80% of public transport users use taxis. Municipal taxi rank constitute potential commercial infrastructure in every township and village. The following interventions are proposed to unlock the taxi economy: evolving taxi ranks into micro CBDs and the development of taxi routes as commercial corridors, supporting vertical integration within taxi value chain, and incentivizing conversion of minibus taxis to green fuel systems. Create an explicit program carving out a portion of existing development finance institutions, funding to support vertical integration within the taxi industry, including panel beating, parts and consumables. We must use public transport as a backbone for new commercial nodes, human settlements, and energy systems. In the short term, this includes fast-tracking integrated ticket system and channeling development financing to upgrade intermodal facilities into commercial nodes. In parallel, it includes taking the first steps to establish provincial public transport authorities and linking the new provincial authorities to development finance, conditional on building green inclusive economies and customer-centric rail and bus transport. We need to reduce the cost of doing business and ramping up competitiveness by investing in freight rail and port system. This is focused on potential freight rail as a mode of transport. We must ensure connectivity of this updated network of lines and ports to new rail links into SADC in support of market access to be generated. On public entities in distress, among our entities, the following were most affected by COVID restrictions. Airports Company South Africa, AXA. It was crucial to prioritize the opening of the OR Tambo, Kinshasa, and Cape Town international airports as the economic triangle hub of aviation in South Africa. AXA has encountered revenue losses proportional to traffic losses in the short to medium term. There would also be non-aeronautical revenues from its airports, notwithstanding that South Africa's gross domestic product is expected to decline by 1.8% to 7% as a result of COVID-19. African airports are expected to suffer a 32.5% decline in passenger numbers and 35% decline in revenues in 2020-2021 financial year. We project that AXA traffic volumes by 2026 could still be below 20% of the current traffic levels, and its operational expenditure will likely decline from 4.8 billion to 3.6 billion by 2026, and its capital expenditure will be 1 billion per annum. Traffic volumes are projected to be down by 30% in 2021, while in 2022 we project 9% recovery, with an annual 2% growth between 2023 and 2026. This therefore means that AXA is not in a position to make any commitments and investments in the immediate term. However, AXA requires 10 to 11 billion in the next 5 years. AXA will therefore need to look into a possibility of selling its non-core assets to remain liquid. This is a process the company has already started to work on. PRASA, Passenger Rail Agency of South Africa. It is worth noting that PRASA had requested an amount of 771.062 for loss in revenue and a further 489,515 million for operational response to COVID equipment, communication, as well as marshals and security. The allocation of 1.260 billion through the reprioritization of PRASA was made, which will result in decrease on PRASA capital budget and increase in operational expenditure to address the shortfall. It is important to note that Autopex, PRASA's bus subsidy revenue, was also severely affected due to the lockdown. In the short term, PRASA is undertaking the rail infrastructure program upgrade on the Pretoria, Mabopane, and the Central Line in Cape Town to the tune of 1.8 billion and 2 billion respectively. In this regard, the Pretoria Mabopane procurement process will be completed in earnest, as well as the finalization of the rail reserve issues in the Central Line in Cape Town. In the medium term, a feasibility study for the high-speed rail will be completed to allow rapid movement towards the implementation phase. Road Accident Fund. The Road Accident Fund financial position indicates that it is technically insolvent and will invariably face further liquidity challenges which urgently need to be addressed. The onset of COVID-19 culminated in lower fuel revenue collection than budgeted for in the 2020-2021 financial year. The department has supported the request for cash injection amounting to the tune of 7.279 billion and a request for 15 billion as a bridge facility to address the credit facility and liquidity pressure. On Sanral, the e-toll challenge has caused a huge delay on other road projects, and its urgent resolve is of paramount importance. Sanral further made a loan request of 7 billion to the Multilateral Investment Guarantee Agency, MIGA, over a 15-year guarantee period to finance old debt and 50% of new projects. Sanral further requested shifting of funds from capital to current transfers for 2.5 billion to accommodate the significant operational expenditure that is from non-toll to toll for 2020 to 2021. In addition, Sanral requested a further 3.5 billion in the funding shortfall for MEGA refinancing. The revenue shortfall is as a result of the collection from toll gates due to COVID-19. SACA, this entity, South African Civil Aviation Authority, generated 74% of its total revenue from the passenger safety charge. IATA predicts a 10.7 million loss from 2021 to 2022 financial year, which is almost 40% of passenger per annum. Capital will therefore need to be put on hold over the next 12 months. On CPRTA Cross-Border Transport Agency, the entities funded through the permit fees from operators, it experienced significant revenue loss resulting from a decline in the permit applications and issuance. However, during level 4, the revenue collection increased by 77%. This shortfall was addressed through the budget reprioritization within the department, which formed part of the 2020 special budget. Further consultation on cross-border agency fees are underway, which will assist in resolving the financial constraints within the entity. On SAMSA, South African Maritime Safety Authority, the Department of Transport and National Treasury are discussing the establishment of the Maritime Development Fund, which will go a long way in triggering growth and transformation in the industry post-COVID-19. Similarly, addressing the tax regime for the South African ship register in the short term as a strategic intervention between the Department of Transport, National Treasury, and SARS will unlock the stifled growth potential in this area. Through the Ports Regulator of South Africa, a new special tariff regime is underway that will benefit everybody. There is an urgent need to fast-track the corporatization of Transnet National Ports Authority as required by National Ports Act of 2005, as well as strategically engaging cautiously on the Section 79 applications by private sector within the ports environment. In conclusion, we are determined to forge ahead with creating strategic partnerships with the industry and civil society to weather the COVID-19 storm by implementing the measures we have identified. It will be vital not to allow this pandemic to reverse the gains achieved since the dawn of democracy. Therefore, the country should gather and support all efforts which will help to revive the economy. I thank you, Chairperson and honorable members.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mbalula. Honorable members, we will now allow for engagement with this specific input, and we want members to indicate whether they want to ask questions. We see the Honorable Moimang, Honorable Bibi, Honorable Ndongeni, who else? Labaskahni. So, Honorable Moimang, you may start.
Thank you, Deputy Chairperson. Ke dumedise letona la dipalangwa le maloko a kokoano themolamo ya diprovince. Letona la dipalangwa Mbalula re lebogela puo e re ba mo dinakong ka selebo le seemo sa dipalangwa mo nakong ena ya leroborobo la COVID-19. Potso ya me ke e latelang letona ka gore badiri le batlhoki gantsi ba dirisa dibese le di-taxi go ya ditirong tsa bone. Potso ke gore re dirang go leka ka bojotlhe gore tshireletsego ya bone ka nako tsotlhe ga e ka tlase ga kgatelelo le gore ga gona nako e leng gore bao ba ba kgweetsang le go owna di-taxi le dibese ba repisa thulaganyo yone ewa ya go sireletsa badiri le batlhoki go ya ditirong tsa bone. Ke a leboga letona.
Thank you very much, Honorable Moimang. Honorable Bibi.
Thank you very much, Chairperson Mama. Greetings to the Minister, special delegates, especially the KZN ones, and also our colleagues and officials. Minister, siyabonga kakhulu ngohlelo okwazile ukuthi usitshele ngayo malena inhlelo ozenzile kulesi sikhathi sobhubhane lokhuvethe esikulona. Siyazi ukuthi ukwazile ukuthi ulungise ilokuzana iziporo zeyitimela ezazikade zihlunsulwe abantu abafuna nje ukona yonke into esemhlabeni eyenzeka kahle. Siyazi ukuthi ke kule disaster management regulations ukwazile ukuthi ungathama ukwenze lokho. Engifuna ukwazi ke mphathiso omnyango ukuthi kuwo konke lokhu okwenzile mayelana nokuthi ulungise imigaqo yeyitimela kulo level 1 esikuwona. Ingaba kuko konke lokho abagibeli bakwazile yini ukuthi bakwazi ukuthi bathole enye i-transport esheshayo futhi eshibhile ukuze bakwazi phela ukuthi bavikeleke and futhi basizakale. Ngiyabonga Minister, ngibonge futhi nakuwena Sihlalo Mama.
Thank you very much, Ma'am Bibi. Can we now give Honorable Ndongeni?
Thank you, Deputy Chair. Good afternoon, Minister, colleagues, everybody. My question is, public transport during COVID-19 remains important to the community, and how is the department ensuring that bus and taxi ranks and vehicles remaining sanitized and safe for commuters, as well as enforcing that all the compliance with PPE equipment and social distancing? Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Ndongeni. Honorable Abskachni. Honorable Abskachni, can you unmute, please?
Hello. Thank you, Chairperson. Sorry. Honorable Minister, you've made some mention of some systems that's going to be implemented, like smart cards and all those things. And Honorable Bebe also referred to something about some help. Hello? Chairperson, can I continue? Can you hear me?
You may continue.
I want to know
Honorable Abskachni.
with the transport sector severely constrained, what subsidies on the consumer side will the department implement to stimulate usage of existing transport systems?
If is your question complete, then we will ask the Honorable Isaac Sileku.
Good afternoon, Chair, and good afternoon to the members on the platform. Parties, thank you very much for all the nice things that we are promising to do. And we always know that the devil is always in the detail. You know, South Africans, we plan, but when it comes to implementation, there's always the use of rail. What immediate steps is the department taking to secure infrastructure on main service routes infrastructure? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable. Are you still speaking, Honorable Sileku?
I'm done, Chair. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Honorable De Toy.
Chairperson, there are some noises in the background. Can we please?
Yes, we are requesting that we make sure that the noise is drowned out. So that is what we are trying to do. Honorable De Toy.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Honorable Minister, what measures are in place to ensure that freight carriers or the truck drivers are protected on the roads, referring to the looting and the trucks being burnt on a continuous basis? And then secondly, Minister, with the current wage negotiations on government and municipal level being a hot topic and protest action being expected, are there any measures in place to ensure that the roads will not be closed as a result of that? Have you taken hands with the police? And if yes, if you could please provide us with the relevant details. Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable De Toy. Honorable Ryder.
Thank you very much, Deputy Chairperson. Minister, you've painted quite a bleak picture today and thrown some fairly large numbers out during your presentation. You also made a very quick passing mention to the thing that I want to talk about, which is e-tolls. Minister, you've already missed another deadline. So you missed November, you missed March, and there's supposed to be a resolution to this impasse. You've missed numerous deadlines. Now, the cost of running the system continues to grow. And now, bizarrely, you announced increases to e-tolls effective the 1st of March of this year. Now, Minister, the collection rate has been dismal all along, but with COVID, it's gotten even worse. And the negative impacts on the Gauteng economy from e-tolls is really devastating to many small businesses that are struggling to recover from the effects of the lockdown and COVID generally. Perhaps you can tell us, why the collection rates have been so bad so far. But my main question, Minister, is why? When the economy has become so precarious in a post-lockdown South Africa, you continue to dither around this matter and seem to be unable to make a decision. When will this ill-advised, poorly planned economic disaster come to an end? Or are you determined to add misery to the lives of commuters slowly recovering from the ravages of COVID?
Next is Honorable Khai.
Thank you very much, Honorable Deputy Chair, and thanks to the Minister for the comprehensive briefing. What is very impressive is that the briefing touches on all first on the department as well as the entities of the transport department. It helps us, especially those of us who serve in the select committee that oversight transport. Honorable Minister, my question would be that what is government's plan for the regulation of the taxi industry in the country to ensure that it is legally compliant to all relevant legislations, including COVID-19 disaster management regulation? I thank you, Deputy Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Khai. Honorable Baha.
Thank you, Chairperson. And let me also welcome the report by the Minister. But mainly, Chairperson, what I would want to know is with the extended period of reduced activity in his department, what has the Minister done to ensure that the available time was used for thoughtful planning of the country's transport challenges and solutions? Or is this just an ordinary break that people are taking? Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Baha. Honorable Boshoff.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good afternoon to the Minister. Minister, as the previous speakers have alluded to your fantastic briefing that you gave us, we will definitely watch this space. And in view of that, I'd like to ask you, in terms of pursuing the goal of a seamless integrated transport system, what immediate plans does the department have to extend the transport infrastructure in South Africa? Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Boshoff. Honorable Beyer-Smith.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Chair. Thank you, Honorable Minister, for attending to the NCOP today. Minister, based on the impact that COVID is having not only on the industry but also on the ordinary South African who is making use of transport. Intimidation tactics used by the taxi industry in Limpopo, and more specifically in Polokwane and Mokopane. Civilians are forced to use taxis and prevented from hiking. They are being beaten with shamboks, and vehicles that dare to load hikers is forced off the road. Their keys confiscated, and passengers are forced out of the vehicle, and even assaulted in some cases. If you are aware of these despicable practices, what is your department doing to ensure that these mafia-style extortions are stopped in their tracks? If you are not aware, what will your commitment today be about it?
Honorable Officer.
Thank you, Chair.
Honourable Minister, given the contraction of the transport cargo sector, what immediate steps is the department taking to reduce the operating costs between port, manufacturer and end user? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Fisser. Lastly will be Honorable Dango.
Thank you very much, Minister. Minister, there were many state-owned enterprises in the transport stable that were operationally and financially performing quite well, such as AXA, ATNS, amongst others, but were negatively affected due to the global ban on travel during the pandemic. What is the current operational and financial status of these entities in the light of the travel that has resumed? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to all the members that have engaged with the presentation of the Minister. Honorable Minister, it's over to you to respond to the engagements. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and honourable members. We have done a lot to mitigate the loss of employment, including making cash injections into public entities through the prioritization of the budget. And more will be done to ensure that measures to stimulate the budget take root and ensure a rebound of the transport sector. On question number 2, we have ensured that 16 priority rail corridors are reclaimed and make them operational. We are currently utilizing the diesel locomotives to ensure service continuity whilst we are fixing the rail network. The rail network really came to a standstill during the lockdown and vandalized, as you would have seen. And we are working very hard to reclaim this network. The department has indeed provided sanitizers and other PPEs during level 5 and level 4 of the pandemic. The department, with the support of the National Treasury, ring-fenced up to 15% of the public transport operators grant and also the public transport network grant to ensure that provinces and cities are able to continue to provide the necessary and required PPEs. SANRAL has continued to invest in the security for road infrastructure, for the provincial road network. Protection of public infrastructure, however, remains the responsibility of society as a whole, and criminality should be dealt with by law. In terms of the other question that has been asked, the government has leveraged on the provision of the taxi relief fund to formalize the taxi industry. We have cooperation of Santaco on this matter. This will pave way for us to professionalize the industry. On the matter of the e-tolls, we are engaging with Treasury and we are at the tail end of our processes. The decision is on the table. We expect that in the next 2 weeks we should be back to cabinet. Before we table our budget vote speech, we should have gone to you and to the public and to announce the cabinet decision on the e-tolls. It has taken longer than we would have liked. We thought by now we would have finalized, but unfortunately it's a big decision. We are not working alone. We'll go back and forth with Treasury on these issues, and that's how it is. So we have to finalize this decision in the next 2 weeks and then table it to you to inform you about the finality on this matter. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. I hope the responses suffice thus far. Let me thus also express our appreciation once again and thank you very much, because we are going to go into the second session that will be chaired by Honorable Nyambi. Honorable Nyambi, over to you.
Deputy Chairperson.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity, Chairperson, Minister Balula. Without much ado, I'll take this opportunity and go straight to have the provincial MECs that will present for 10 minutes as maximum. If it's less than that, it's fine, but not anything beyond the 10 minutes. The MEC will be giving the provincial intervention to mitigate the impact of COVID-19 on the transport industry. Of course, they'll be trying to cover aspects not covered by Honorable Mbalula. We're starting with Honorable MEC Tikane of Eastern Cape.
Chair, may we start with Gauteng?
Okay. Honorable MEC Mamabulo, Gauteng. MEC Gauteng Maboneng.
Yes, Honorable Chair, Honorable members. Can I greet you? I hope you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you. We can.
I can. Now, let me say that we thought we were number 3 on the list, and we just want to, I'd just like to say that we were ready to be number 3, but now that we have been put first, we will have to comply. So, to all honorable members, to the minister, and to all the MECs, and to all the people that are participating in this very important briefing session. My input, Chair, we have submitted a report, let me just say that, but we have also felt that perhaps there are areas we need to strengthen, and we have asked that a much more improved report will be sent. And we are building on the leadership and precedent of the minister. So we will not do a slide presentation, but if that affects the meeting in any way, we will be able to answer the questions. Now, very briefly, since the outbreak of COVID-19 and the lockdowns that were introduced in 2020, particularly in April, we as the provincial government of Gauteng, we took a decision that all departments, including ourselves as the Department for Roads and Transport and Roads, we agreed that we will introduce measures to positively manage the negative impact and severity of COVID-19, particularly on the commuting public. So our focus, Chair, has been on making sure that we also give effect to the decisions that were taken in the MINMEC meeting, that is the meeting of ministers and MECs, in which we also agree on measures for mitigation. Now, in this province, what we did subsequent to those directives of the provincial government and the minister, we then set up a proper governance model to make sure that we can roll out a proper program to manage the spread of COVID-19 and to alleviate the pressure on particularly the public transport sector. Chair, I may not speak to the macroeconomic issues. Minister has dealt with some of those, and I'll just focus on the specific interventions. The very first area of focus for us in the province was with respect to the governance model, as I said, which integrates with municipalities. I must report that we have worked very well with all the municipalities in the province, and they were directly reporting into the structures and processes that we have established. So we had a very good relationship with all our municipalities. The key area of focus was the taxi industry, as it is the biggest carrier of the commuting public, accounting for about 70% of all the people that uses public transport. And we also felt that given the challenges of the taxi industry, we should consolidate our effort in making sure that we bring great relief to commuters, but to the taxi industry itself to protect human life. It is for this reason, Chair and honorable members, that we recruited about 2,000 taxi rank marshals, and they were deployed to taxi ranks on a full-time basis, of course, as they work there. The taxi rank marshals were seconded to us by the taxi industry, both Santago and the National Taxi Alliance in Gauteng, Gauteng National Taxi Alliance, GNTA. And we have spent 56 million rands to support this cadet program with the taxi industry to make sure that we have full capacity and infrastructure on the ground on a daily basis from morning to afternoon to enforce the COVID-19 protocols. I must say, honorable members, if we did not recruit this capacity of taxi rank marshals, it would have been very difficult to get consistent performance and then being there every minute, every second, every hour at the taxi ranks to sanitize, to enforce wearing of masks at the time when taxis were not allowed to take full load, but also to just make sure that all the protocols were enforced in the taxi industry. I must also say that we were also supported by the Church of the Scientology Church, did also second a lot of volunteers who worked with us through the most difficult moments, and I must thank the Church of Scientology for having worked with us. We also procured the support of the outsurance marksmen or markspersons. These are the people, as you know, who do traffic controls at busy intersections. We were able to procure their services to join us so that we can be able to strengthen our capacity to do this work. I must also say that we worked with CSIR, the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, to develop an electronic monitoring tool, which we gave to the taxi rank marshals to report into our war room, which was a daily war room in which we're monitoring statistical movement changes and performance on a daily basis. Honorable members, we were keeping statistics on a daily basis and numbers of how many people were passing through the taxi ranks and how many people were being sanitized. I must also say we did have a program to clean taxi ranks working with municipalities, and of course this needs to be sustained moving forward. The other intervention that I must also report is that we had mobilized about 100 monitors from the learner or school transport stakeholders, and they were to ensure that during the reopening of schools, we can enforce protocols relating to COVID-19 in the schools. Let me also report that as we stand currently, we have recruited about 536 military veterans. We have just completed the process of their selection, and we are going to reinforce the monitoring in schools to make sure that learner transport also fully comply with protocols on COVID-19, and of course, with the period where we are worried about the dangers of COVID-19 rate of infections in the winter period. So that the military veterans, 586 of them, will be deployed to schools, will be using the app developed by CSIR to report and monitor and ensure that learner transport fully complies. We have also, let me quickly report that the negative impact on the taxi industry, Minister has spoken to that, but in our province, we have seen taxi associations increasing commuter fares very arbitrarily, and that is also having a negative impact on the commuters. We are seeing renewed taxi violence because they are fighting for routes, given the impact of COVID-19 on their revenue streams, and this is a great matter of concern to us. Quickly to the buses. In this province, we have got 32 contracts with various service bus companies, and we have introduced an electronic monitoring system. We got a service provider to support monitoring. This was part of us monitoring performance by the bus contractors, and this came in handy to support our monitoring of the buses with respect to commuters. This has worked very well. We also gave them, like the taxi industry, disinfectants and sanitizers. Although this was not enough, they had to use theirs. Currently, we're standing at a point where they've actually declared a dispute with us that they need a refund of the money they've spent buying PPE, and we are looking into that matter currently. But the buses have been severely impacted upon with respect to spending money on PPE, and also the numbers have also impacted their revenue streams because of the lockdown. But in general, we worked with them very well. On Gautrain, I must say, as you know, there was a time when the trains were not allowed to run, but when the rail was allowed back by the minister, Gautrain has been able to protect and defend its rail infrastructure in the sense that although they were not allowing commuters onto the train, but they allowed the train to run empty throughout. And that was to ensure that they protect the rail infrastructure. And I must commend the leadership of Gautrain for making sure that they preserve and protect their infrastructure. They had it intact by the time they came back. On the negative side, Gautrain has been badly and severely affected by low passenger numbers. We are currently working on that matter, but I think Gautrain has also been one of the best performing areas with regard to implementing COVID-19 protocols. So the issues of low numbers, we are working on them, we are looking at them, and we are monitoring that. But I must say to honorable members, Gautrain has been a good example on how to protect commuters against COVID-19. Municipal buses and BRTs have already reported that we have been working with municipalities. We have conducted visits, many of them with the minister. One remarkable, we have gone with the minister to City of Joburg, to City of Tshwane, to Ekurhuleni, to enforce compliance in the BRT and municipal buses. And I must say that although there were challenges, but the metros, because the other municipalities do not have this infrastructure and resources, but we have done our best to protect commuters. So to that extent, the last point, which has been an area of great concern and has affected us, is that we couldn't, of course, take care of our road network because of the lockdown and people not working. We have experienced challenges on maintaining good roads, but as you would have seen, we have already started working City of Joburg, Mfuleni, and the other municipalities who are going into them, this has been an impact of COVID-19. But the last point, I just want to thank Minister that he has really worked very hard in our province. Of course, he has supported us a lot, and I think I would like to place it on record and thank Minister for his leadership and guidance and for practically being with us in this province during that difficult period. With this, Chair, we will answer questions if there are any. Thank you very much.
Thank you, MEC Mamabulo. Thanks for the presentation about the state of Gauteng in supporting what has been done by the minister. The next presenter will be Free State MEC, Honorable MEC Mashinini. Honorable Mashinini.
Thank you very much, Chairperson of the House. Let me also follow suit and thank the Minister, presence here, and the National Chair of the NCOP. Thank you very much. Ours is going to be very, very brief and straight to the point. I will indicate the purpose of why I am here today in terms of briefing the NCOP as to how far are we with mitigating the COVID-19 and what we have done up to so far. Now, I want to go to the legislative mandate. I think members in this House, they are quite aware about the legislative mandate and what is required for us for law enforcement. I think they are well. I'll go straight to the issues. We all know that the Honorable President declared from the 26th of March 2020 national lockdown. The Minister of Transport issued the transport directives to the national spectrum on how transport imperatives would be managed through the respective lockdown levels in accordance with a Disaster Management Act of 1957, 2002. Public transport chair law enforcement bodies in the Free State were mandated to ensure compliance with the National Land Transport Act 5 of 2009, Free State Public Transport Act number 4 of 2005, and the Disaster Management Act 57 of 2002, and the underlying regulation issued in terms of these. Partnerships were formed with public transport stakeholders in implementing this, and law enforcement bodies formulate plans that would assist in ensuring that the spread of COVID-19 was minimized in the province, with specific reference to public air transport operation. Quickly, I want to indicate the different stakeholders that we worked with. We are still working with the South African National Defence Force, the South African Police Services, the Department of Health, Taxi Industry Santaco and NTA, Provincial and Local Taxi Association, the bus industry in the form of the IBF, and the Maluti Bus Service, Supervisory, Monitoring Firm, Mangaung Metro Municipality, District, Local Municipality. So these were the stakeholders that we worked with. Now, the taxi associations, just to give a brief background, in the province, taxi associations operating in the province, in total number there are 48. The scholar transport that we also work with, there are 21. Operators in the province, 5,877. Vehicles and operating licenses, 7,437. Now, the district that we are on the issue of separating distance, we have 11 associations. Then Fezile Dabi, we have 12 associations. Visually Kuta, we have 16. Mateo, 6. Harib, 3. And when you add that, they go straight to 48. Scholar associations, it's 8 in Thabo Mofutanyana, it's 4 in Fezeledabe, it's 4 in Muteo. We don't have any in Khabib. Metered taxi, that's where our challenge is. They don't want to be part of the association. And one of the issues that is challenging us is that in the Free State, we don't agree with 2 associations in one route. And then one of the challenges that is facing us is that they want to have many associations in one route. And that, in our view, creates an area of conflict. So we are still dealing with that matter to see how far we can go with that. The law enforcement intervention, what we have done, law enforcement organizations are tasked to ensure the implementation of public transport regulation under the 3 legislative acts: the Disaster Management Act, National Land Transport Act, and then the Free State Public Transport Act. Transport law enforcement, SAPS, traffic officials were responsible throughout for monitoring public transport services to ensure that operators are compliant with COVID-19 safety requirements. These organizations frequently conduct visits to public transport facilities and conduct roadblock to monitor and ensure that the COVID-19 health and safety guidelines, and to ascertain that association have appointed a designated safety compliance officer at the public. This we are raising. That's why when you arrive in the Free State, you will not miss a roadblock in the way. You will not miss a traffic officer in the way. Precisely because we are saying we must monitor and assist the spread of COVID-19. Law enforcement organizations ensure that social distancing is maintained at all ranks as per the regulation. Law enforcement organization plans and conduct integrated rapid roving roadblocks. Various locations in the Free State focus on compliance to the disaster management and underlying regulation applicable to the public transport. And then COVID-19 transport activities. What we have done, 180 educational awareness campaigns were hosted throughout the lockdown phase. Educational, speaking to people. We are not going to win the fight if we don't speak to people. And that's why we took it as one of the key priorities to ensure that motorists are also educated. These campaigns were supported by the Deputy Minister of Police, the Free State Premier, the National and Provincial Commissioner, Department of Health, SLDF, municipal representatives, and other stakeholders that joined together to shorten the spread of the pandemic. The department, together with the public transport industry, implemented a taxi facility disinfection program from the 27th of March until the 9th of May, wherein 65 formal taxis were repeatedly disinfected. The custodian of the public transport facilities were allocated with 77 Gemetol to 20-liter disinfection gel, and then 66 knapsack sprayers, 115 sanitizers, 25 liters, and so on, to ensure that their people, commuters, are basically disinfected. People are disinfected whenever they get into the transport. That has to be done if we are playing our role. The PPE materials was issued to 46 taxi associations and the Metered Taxi Association in the province in conjunction with the provincial taxi and regional taxi inspectors. And I want to thank the national department because it is the one that assisted us with the disinfectant, and we managed to push on. Thank you very much, Minister. Public transport operators and users, radio, Facebook, and other platforms throughout the different lockdowns. This is as a way of educating. Long-distance public transport facilities were disinfected from the 1st of May to the 7th of May 2020 in adherence to the special dispensation regulation as issued by the Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs. 3,105 scholar transport vehicles were disinfected during this period. The Taxi Association were encouraged to submit the application for consideration by provincial regulatory entity through their respective regional managers. Transport law enforcement conduct weekly roving roadblocks. I have talked about that. Now I want to come to the specific integrated COVID-19 roadblocks.
As you round off, Honorable Mashinini.
Yes, I don't want to speak on general. I can tell you, give you the figures of Fezile, how many roadblocks we have done, which road did we target throughout all the other areas in terms of conducting the roadblocks. Now, the roadblocks, I can give you this report, it's very clear. And the transport, COVID-19 transport activities that we engaged on, and I can give that. For the sake of time, I then have to gallop to assist you. I actually wanted to give to the honorable members a full detail, but because of time that is allocated to me, I want to stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Minister Mashinini. We appreciate we knew in advance about the earlier commitment, but we have prioritized the importance of this session of the NCOP with the engagement by your good self and the minister. Now I invite the Honorable Minister of Limpopo, Lerule Ramakanya, Honorable MEC Limpopo, Lerule Ramakanya.
Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you, Chairperson. Let me start by appreciating the time that you are giving me, and also greetings to the Chairperson of the NCOP, the Deputy Chairperson, the Honorable Minister of our department, my colleagues, MECs, other members of the NCOP, and also all members who are online with us. We have indeed submitted a presentation, so I'll try and go through it as fast as I can, not to take much time. But Honorable Chair, let me also join my other colleagues, MECs, that have indicated that as well in Limpopo, as the Department of Transport and Community Safety, we were given the responsibility to lead all operations in terms of the COVID-19 awareness and also on the COVID-19 compliance with all the stakeholders. So it meant that all the operations in terms of around the province and the awareness, it was our department that was leading. So with that, we had all the stakeholders that my other colleagues have already alluded to, both that were given support by other national departments that are in the security cluster that were tasked to deal with the COVID-19 compliance and pushing back the infection. So I'll also focus on, I will not do the mandates as the minister has already covered us a lot. I'll go into the background that we need to note that Limpopo province is one of the most rural areas in the country. And I think the minister has already alluded to say in most other areas, the impact was so much because of the lack of network within the transport industry itself to be able to talk to each other. Most of the commuters in our province rely on buses and taxis to move from one point to the other. The province is managing 26 bus subsidies contracts using public transport operation grant and equitable share that we are given each year. The province supports the taxi industry with 5 million on an annual basis to administer and manage the taxi industry. On the impact on the COVID-19 to public transport chair, COVID-19 had a severe impact on revenue collection on bus operators. Bus operators includes those receiving passenger subsidy, commercial bus operators, and tourist bus operators, which then, this is the cluster of the buses, the nature that we have in the province. The bus subsidy operators had to amend their timetable based on the demand and supply during the specific lockdown levels. You remember that from 5 until we reached the stage of 1, we were opening differently in terms of who goes out in terms of the compliance. So the bus had to also deal with the amendment as the demands was out there. And you'll agree, Chair, that the business only started to normalize during November 2020. The loss ranges about 245 for small bus operators and 3.2 million for bigger bus operators during April 2020. The state-owned bus companies, GNT as well, in the province have lost a lot of money during this period. The taxi industry was also negatively affected by COVID-19. The limited number of commuters affected, it affected their financial standing. Tourist public transport could not move at all for 3 quarters. Up to now, their business are not active as there are very limited movements to tourist attraction areas, as I think the minister did allude to that. We have also seen jobs being lost within the industry. Individual companies approached the department complaining that they are unable to license even their vehicles, which is a process that we are taking through with them. The interventions in the support of the public transport industry, Chair, as a province was granted authority to pay standing kilometers to all the subsidy operators, but at a 60%, so that then for their respective rates, based on the average kilometers operated over a period of 3 months. We had to make a submission to EXCO as a department to plead that if we do not pay some of the operators, they might also not be able to recover fully, as much as they did not move some of the kilometers. An amount of 39 million was paid out on standing kilometers for the 26 bus subsidy contracts in the province. And I think we were basing our approach on section 29.2 of our subsidy contracts that provides that we have got a responsibility to deal with the subsidies of the buses. So on the other intervention, the province supported the industry by provision of sanitizers, disinfectants, and power sprays, as well as monitoring compliance in both taxis and bus ranks. We, as an MEC, we also led campaigns of the disinfection of taxi ranks in all the 5 districts in order to reduce the spread of the virus, namely our district is Mupani, Vembe, Pukune, Capricorn, and Waterberg. This was after when the lockdown the levels were being relaxed and we saw many people coming out. So we had to go to each taxi rank to make sure that our stakeholders, as the taxi associations, the marshals, the taxi drivers also understand the procedures on what has to happen. A request has been submitted to the provincial treasury for consideration on the rebates for the public transport sector, especially in our province, for those that are like your tourist sector, bus operators and taxi operators that are not even up to now able to recover. The province is also assisting the taxi industry to manage their administrative affairs. The limited movement to schools, churches, and public gatherings have also just affected the normal taxi industry and bus industry. Chair, for the province to prepare for the anticipated third wave, budget have been cut tremendously, as you know. The current employment status of traffic officials necessitate that the payment of overtime for all hours worked beyond 40 hours a week. So we have seen the budget cut also starting to affect us when it comes to the traffic officers in terms of us dealing with the compliance continuously of the COVID-19. And I think, as you will remember, that when we started all the other levels in every entrance in our province, be it when you are getting into NCOP and the other D-lanes, you will find roadblocks. But currently, because of the budget cuts, we can no longer be proud of such activities. The limits of the deployment of officers over the weekend, which is compromising on the issues of service delivery. But in terms of the last slide, Chair, that I can present, it is on the issues that going forward, as part of our recommendation, as much as we have got all those shortcomings, we are saying that as a province, we are looking at towards the assistance of 140 million to honor the annual bus subsidy adjustment of 5.5% approved by Treasury. So if we are to have such an injection, it will be able to assist us, to assist taxi operators on the implementation of the resolution of the next National Taxi Lekgotla for them to be able to sustain themselves. I'll not go into details on this one. The minister has already alluded on the taxi Lekgotla decisions. We are also looking towards injecting 10 million towards the provision of the PPEs for the public transport industry. You will remember that to cut the spread, we need to continuously deal with the compliance issues. But also for compliance, we also need to expedite the implementation of our 24/7 shift system at national level to avoid the reliance on overtime for effective deployment of all our traffic officers. And I think, Chair, as well as Limpopo Province, where we want to thank the National Department through the Office of the Minister, we have been able to be beneficiaries to a lot of programs. One, the sanitization programs in terms of intervention. Two, the deployments of officials in terms of assisting us in compliance. And three, I think all the programs that my colleagues have spoken about that the minister was able to give us support as he has presented was also what was happening in the Limpopo province. So without wasting time, let me thank you. If ever there are any other issues, we'll respond to questions. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable MEC. I now invite Mpumalanga, Honorable MEC Lachmina Rain.
Thank you, Chair, and greetings to the Minister, as well as to the Chair and the Deputy Chair of the NCOP, all delegates and staff. You have been appointed in this position as MEC for Public Works, Roads and Transport in Mpumalanga for 2 months now. So I'm a little bit new in this department. However, safe to say, while I am new in this department, I have already experienced the challenges in respect of your taxi challenge violence, grievances by bus operators. So, Chair, if you could allow me to present, I know we are speaking, or the theme for today is mitigating the impact of COVID-19 pandemic in the transport industry. But as I'm sitting here, I am presenting from the car, monitoring the situation in Middelburg, where we have a dispute between two associations. And as a method of resolving the disputes between the two associations, we undertook all procedures to ensure that both parties could come to some sort of an agreement between themselves in respect of appointing a mediator. After those processes were ventures myself, we saw the lives of commuters being more important, and therefore we decided to National Land Transport Act in terms of sending the operators operations of the route. To suspend the routes, but we still have violence on the ground. But I'm proud to say that the department has managed to maintain that, and the situation is controlled. What makes me proud is that I can sit here saying we have no lives lost, which is a important factor in terms of the community that we deal with. Chair, we have submitted a presentation. I think the presentation is in your possession. I'm not sure if they're going to be in the presentation, but allow me to take you through in terms of the background. In Mpumalanga as a province, we have 71 registered taxi associations, and that comprises as follows. Ehlanzeni district, we sit with 20. That comes with Kapsi Bande at 28 and 23 in Nkangala district. There's 24,933 taxi vehicles registered and almost 9,776 active members that's registered. The department is also managing 7 bus operators. Chair, what we will note is there's no PPEs that was supplied to the bus contractors. They provided the sanitizers to the passengers at their own expense. On page 3, we are dealing with the PPEs that was received, and the department received the personal protective equipment for Mpumalanga public transport industry on the 6th of April 2020 from the Department of Transport as an intervention to contain the spread. We have included a table indicating the items received as well as the quantities. On page 7, we show the additional materials that was received in terms of 7,600 1-liter bottles of sanitizers, 46,800 surgical masks, and 120 20-liter sanitizers. On page 8, it's just a continuation of other PPEs that was received by the department. And
Our chair, we can't hear anymore.
Yes, I'm also begging to hear what's happening. Honorable MEC.
Your sound is back, but not the MEC's one.
No, is the MEC.
It's indeed a Mpumalanga issue, not a Free State one.
No, the MEC is in the car. It's working. That is why we're going to appeal to her if she still has got some problem, because we know the Honorable Minister of Transport has got energy, can quickly run to Middelburg and assist if ever it's failing to deal with the challenges of those taxis in Middelburg.
Oh.
But the problem is in Mpumalanga.
No, let's go to Northwest. MEC, Honorable MEC Lehari, Northwest. Honorable Lehari. Honorable Lehari in Northwest. It's also struggling. If that is still a problem in Northwest, we can go to.
I'm here, my chief.
Okay, continue, Honorable Lehari.
focus on areas that were not covered by the Honorable Minister Mbalul.
I will do that. On behalf of Northwest, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, even though the picture is not there.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me acknowledge and greet leadership present in this meeting, just to save time. I think Minister has covered many of areas in the province. But the purpose of this briefing for the National Council of Provinces on the intervention measures implemented by the Northwest Department of Community Safety and Transport Management is to mitigate the impact on COVID-19 within the public transport services in the province. Just in brief, the announcement of lockdown by His Excellency, the President, last year in March, took the country and transport industry by surprise. And the operation in the sector was minimal and in some instances came to a standstill. I'm summarizing this report because of the 10 minutes given. For a period of 2 months, small bus operators contracted to, for a period of 2 months, small bus operators contracted to provide learner transport came to a standstill as schools were closed and subsidized bus operators stopped operation for a month. Small bus operators were given first priority with assistance of disinfectants, sanitizers, and face shield as only grade 7 and 12 learners were returning to school. During that period, we used only 358 buses to transport learners to school. 358 buses. We were assisted by the National Department of Transport, thank you, Minister, with a consignment of personal protective equipment, PPE, for public transport operators. This enabled the department to further assist small bus operators with PPEs as more buses were returning to operations. In total, Chairperson, 195 operators and 681 bus drivers were supplied with PPEs. Added to that, the department has appointed 63 monitors to assist in ensuring compliance, and others will be appointed later in this financial year. As indicated in the slide on screen, Chairperson, 47 of 63 monitors were women. In already mentioned earlier, the department has donated over 1,300 liters of sanitizers, over 2,100 liters to disinfectants, and 681 face shields to small bus operators. As per the directive of the National Department of Transport, the department has further reprioritized 5% of the budget for the procurement of PPEs for public transport operators. Chairperson, this was done to assist all operators with PPEs, but as we had not assisted subsidized operators, they were then prioritized. As the slide indicates, we assisted the following operators. Atamelang, these are public transport, not learner transport. Atamelang bus transport, Amarosa Trading, Bujanala Bus, and Pumutra, with a total of 175 20 liters of sanitizer. The same operators were also assisted with 145 20 liters of disinfectant, 65 scab sacks, and equipment used to disinfect buses, and 1,380 face shields. The same, let me repeat, the same operators were also assisted with 155 20 liters disinfectants, 65 napskins, and equipment used to disinfect buses. I think you know it. And 1,380 face shield. I think my report consists of 19 pages. So I've summarized this report to 4 pages. The rest, leadership will read from those reports. In conclusion, Chairperson of the NCOP, some of this equipment used to disinfect buses will be distributed once more to the taxi industry. Just in addition, I think we visited we have close to more than 90 taxi ranks in the province. We visited almost close to 60 taxi ranks in the province, both in rural and in urban areas, just to distribute the PPEs, because also taxis are also part of our transport. Now, we will also distribute more face shields to small bus operators for the drivers. As the schools opens on Monday, we're on that process. There's a program for that. Now, I think up so far so good. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable MEC Lehari. Let me now invite Northern Cape Honorable MEC Bloom. Honorable Bloom.
Thank you very much to the Honorable Chairperson of the NCOP, Honorable Amos Masondo, the Deputy Chairperson, Honorable Sylvia Lucas, our honorable members present, all MECs present, staff and all delegates present. Let me once more, in many ways, this past year has forced us to draw closer to each other, not only to fight crime, accidents, and the loss of our lives in our roads, but an invisible enemy known as the COVID-19 virus that has claimed millions of lives across the globe. Now, Chairperson, since as a province, we have also submitted our presentation, I'll touch here and there. Now, so far for us, creating communities where we are safe, and not only meant that arresting criminals and fighting lawlessness, but also arresting the spread of the virus through stringent monitoring and enforcement of law down regulations regarding transport. Now, in mitigating the mitigation of the impact of the pandemic, COVID-19, since its inception, lockdown regarding the public transport. I won't touch the legislative mandate. As you know, that during the lockdown period, as per declaration by the President of the Republic of South Africa in relation to the outbreak of the pandemic, the following measures were put in place in the province. One, the provision of improved access of those hygiene protocols. As we know that hygiene protocols is to adhere to and to be in line with the Disaster Management Act. Now, we embarked on public transport, also by in operations, ensuring that transport is in the province, hygiene protocols are adhered to. And then what we did in the Northern Cape, marshals were also recruited and appointed, whereby every day at every taxi rank, they were there to keep that hygiene protocols were followed. There were sanitizers, there were in each and every taxi, mask, every commuter, and even the taxi drivers, the marshals made it clear that they must wear their masks. So in all taxi ranks, all hygiene protocols were followed. Now, during the restrictions whereby there were curfew regarding the public transport, in the Northern Cape, we were assisted by, we thank very much for the assistance of the SAPs, who are also law enforcers in the province. Together with we were working together with the defense force. They were assisting in the department regarding the curfew as per restrictions. Now, in the loading of public transport, a vehicle regarding the restrictions which were supposed traffic or minibuses, restrictions were adhered to. 8 passengers, whereby now the number was reduced. Regarding the taxi industry, the taxi industry in the province was very much affected. It was very much affected, but due to the campaigns which in the province we've done across the areas, there are some regions in the province. As we know that Northern Cape is the most vast province, scattered. So we managed to have those campaigns at those taxi ranks. Now, in order now for the department to adhere to the strict measures and to the disaster management and to adhere to the hygiene protocols, the taxi industry, it continues to assist this public transport. As I said, that we have submitted our presentation. Now, fortunately, in the Northern Cape, the Department of Transport, we are only having 2 taxi associations, whereby we did distribute some sanitizers by the assistance or through the assistance of the National Department, our Minister Fikile Mbalula. So we have distributed hand sanitizers, Gematol disinfectant, snacks, gloves, masks, almost empty bottles. Empty bottles were almost 35,000, masks were 89,000. This was in a form of a donation by the National Department to the provincial province department. So there were disposable protective gear, which were almost 106, disinfectant, car spray, numbering amounted to 50, and then the Gematol disinfectant, there were 67 times 20 liters. We would like to thank our minister for the donation the provincial department has done to the province, since knowing that in order for the same department in the province, in our province in the Northern Cape, in order for those regions to receive these sanitizers, we had to use transport, and most of the budget ends in transport alongside the road. Now, bus operators, there were bus operators with effect from the 1st of May 2020. Bus operators, companies, they resumed full operations, and there were at the depots, there were inspections were done. There were trips made or visitation made by the department. So hand sanitizers were also given to all buses and even passengers, commuters. Now, it is important that from our monthly operational passenger test, most of the buses here in the Northern Cape, approximately 80% to 90% of our passengers, except for end of the and peak. However, with the review of the operating schedules, timetables are there, not need to there. Timetables were made available. So since the lockdown restrictions were lifted to level 3, our team in the department, in the province, did monitoring of passenger volumes and to ensure that should be there any extra trips, kilometers to be operated by any company, the necessary amendments had to be implemented. Now we are having challenges. We have encountered that. We have experienced challenges regarding the continuous cutting of the budget in the province that affect our activities. And also the second main challenge in the province, as far as the minister is aware, we are having a shortage of traffic officers in our department. But the recommendations is that to the committee is that the program to monitor that operations will continue to adhere to the COVID-19 lockdown regulations. Now we are having, I've also submitted the how part as to how were the PPEs distributed, as I've mentioned. So without wasting any time, Chairperson, I would like to say thank you.
Thank you, Honorable MEC Bloom. I'll now invite the Western Cape Honorable MEC Simas. Western Cape.
Thank you very much. House Chairperson, firstly, the Chairperson of the NCOP, the Deputy Chairperson of the NCOP, the National Minister of Transport, Honorable Cathle Mbalula, members of the NCOP present, all fellow provincial MECs, the National DG and all relevant staff. Firstly, thank you for this opportunity, Honorable House Chairperson, to present the Western Cape Government's response to the subject which we've been asked to prepare for today. And with that, I would kindly like to hand over to my head of department, who will do a formal presentation on behalf of the Western Cape to clearly illustrate what we have done in response since the commencement of COVID-19 as a provincial government through this relevant provincial department. Thank you very much, House Chair.
Thank you very much through you, Honourable Chairperson and the MEC. Just want to check that you can hear me all right on your side.
I can hear you. We can hear you properly, Judy.
Thank you very much. So much appreciated. We also have provided a formal presentation through to the committee team, but instead of presenting it, I'll just take a few of the highlights through for you this afternoon. So from the Western Cape Department of Transport and Public Works' response to the COVID-19 pandemic and dealing with the impact on the transport industry, I'm going to just touch on a few areas, one which focuses on the intergovernmental relationships that we put in place to be able to respond to the pandemic, how we responded on our planning, establishment and operation.
Question, Honourable House Chair.
Honourable Miemang, no. Honourable Miemang.
I thought we are being addressed by the MECs, Honourable House Chair.
No, they've made that arrangement.
Thank you, House Chair.
Yes, thanks. Can you continue, Honourable Ejodi?
Thank you very much. Much appreciated. So then to focus on and provide a bit of detail around the planning, establishment and operation of what we call the Red Dot taxi service, and to then give you an overview around how we dealt with transport operations around a transport hub and the utilization of technology. And then what a number of the Honourable MECs have dealt with aspects around distribution of PPE and sanitizers. And then something that as a department we were requested to support, which is around the repatriation and evacuation of foreign nationals. And we utilized a part of the transport industry to support us in that particular program. And then I'll touch on dealing how we supported the Department of Education in the Western Cape with the learner transport aspects, and then finally the traffic law enforcement side. So if I may begin with an indication of the intergovernmental relations that we put in place. Right up front, when we were informed about the lockdown and the disaster regulations, we established the necessary coordination committees with the City of Cape Town, worked with the disaster management centers and the necessary JOCs. And what we were able to then do from an intergovernmental and integrated approach is respond to the immediate challenges from a supply point of view of public transport, and where operators had problems. We were able to provide guidance where many of the operators needed assistance to understand and interpret the regulatory environment that we now found ourselves in, because it was something new to everybody. We were able to then also provide comments and inputs to the National Department of Transport as they went through their consultation processes with the provinces around the various regulations. And we also then put in place collectively a live monitoring system, so a to-the-moment monitoring system of public transport, particularly across the metropolitan area, which brought in place surveyors at public transport facilities, utilized CCTV cameras across the system, as well as then a passenger feedback process. In trying to support particularly the minibus taxi industry, as the lockdown occurred, and as has already been said, there are a number of instances where industries certainly immediately felt the pressure from a passenger perspective. So we established, in collaboration with Santaco Western Cape, so the South African National Taxi Council in the Western Cape, they formed a company called Umanyano Travel Services, and we established a partnership with them and our Provincial Department of Health, where we created a red dot taxi service that had two different aspects to it. The first one, fundamentally, to be able to transport people to and from quarantine and isolation facilities that were necessary in the Western Cape, as well as then providing a service for the healthcare workers who, particularly when there was the curfew hours and public transport wasn't able to operate, but contracted services could, we put in place this particular contract with Umanyano, in other words, with the minibus taxi industry. So as of January 2021, the Red Dot service also now provides and supports the Department of Health with discharging patients from hospitals to their homes to be able to support the throughput of patients in our healthcare facilities. To give you a sense, from the start of the Red Dot service, as at the end of March 2021, the service had provided just shy of 196,000 healthcare worker trips from 25 hospitals in the Cape Metro. There were just over 22,400 successful quarantine and isolation trips that were operated across the Western Cape, not just in the Metro, but the Cape Winelands, the Overberg region, Garden Route, Central Crew, and West Coast. And overall, we've used up to 250 minibus taxi vehicles that and their drivers and operators that are specifically dedicated to provide this particular service for the Western Cape. We then, from a compliance point of view, and many of the MECs through your chair have mentioned about compliance monitoring of the use of PPE and others, we put in place a process where we can survey at facilities utilizing CCTV cameras, and then technology that our department had already invested in, we could utilize with minor alterations for an app where the surveyors could provide on the ground and immediate feedback to us to this live system to allow us to then direct people to respond where we found that facilities needed to be cleaned, where there wasn't sanitization happening, or when we needed to deploy law enforcement, both from the municipality's point of view as well as from our own department. The presentation that has been submitted provides some screenshots of the types of surveys that were done, the data that was received, And this also then we make sure we report through on a regular basis to the National Department of Transport, where we also identify trends across different types of facilities and different operations. We use that and something called a USSD code, where we then advertised to the public a particular code that they can utilize to provide feedback to us as a department about where work needed to be happening. So if, for example, a driver wasn't wearing their mask, or if there wasn't hand sanitizer on board, passengers could actually provide us directly with that feedback to allow us to then respond. In terms of the bus services, the contracted bus services within the Western Cape, our department oversees the Golden Arrow bus services as the one company, and then in collaboration with the George municipality, the Go George bus service. We worked with the operators to ensure that the services could be operated safely during the lockdown period. The City of Cape Town did the same thing with their My City service. And during that particular process, we implemented measures to adjust the timetables, adhere to the capacity restrictions, ensuring that hand sanitizer was on board, screening of employees, etc. So all of those things were dealt with. And we also put in place a contract addendum with Golden Arrow Bus Services as a department to ensure that their services could operate viably during the lockdown period from a financial perspective. From a procurement and distribution of sanitizer perspective, again, we actually assisted GAB's George Link, which is the company operating the Go George services, as well as the City of Cape Town and Santaco. We procured and distributed sanitizer and PPE. And then also, as other provinces mentioned, donations received from the National Department were also then distributed through to the industry. The quantums are provided in the presentation that we have previously submitted. In terms of the repatriation process, we used a different part of the public transport industry to be able to provide some kind of services for them and some financial income. So SANSBOC, the South African National Small Bus Operators Council, as well as SABOA members, were approached and contracted to provide transport services of foreign nationals, for foreign nationals to be repatriated through the various what's the word I'm looking for, through their consulates. And overall in that particular...
As we move towards conclusion, HOT.
Will do, thank you, Chair. In that area, we supported and paid just short of 830,000 Rand to that particular operating grouping. On the learner transport side, once again, working with the Department of Education, supported there. And in the public transport and the law enforcement side, our law enforcement teams worked under SAPS's direction to ensure all the roadblocks and aspects that others have already mentioned. Through you, Chair, in conclusion, I believe that from the Western Cape's perspective, there were good intergovernmental arrangements in place. We developed a plan of action that we could utilize to respond to. There was a great focus on communication and behavior change, and many of the solutions that we developed and tested through COVID, we are now taking forward into new programs that we're implementing post the immediate COVID response. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Colleagues, honorable members, Minister, Chair, we now have a better sense of what transport nationally, working with the different MSCs in our respective provinces as the house that is representing this interest of provinces at national level. We understand everything that has been done when it comes to the provincial intervention to mitigate the impact of COVID-19 on the transport industry. It's very encouraging to have a sense and appreciate the role of the minister in making sure that it's supporting across the board and all the provinces are coming to play to deal with the impact of this new normal that is facing the country and the world. Thanks, Acting MEC Western Cape, for making it possible and bring somebody. We understand the situation because we are not the one who's in charge of that department. The KZN MEC is still part of the preparation, as you are aware, about the challenges of losing the princess in KZN. So there's that official ceremony tomorrow. So that is why she could not make it in time, but she will send the presentation so that we can go through. Without much ado, I'll take this opportunity to give it to Ntate Masondo, our chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, to take the final part of this program to its logical conclusion. Ntate Masondo.
Thank you very much, Jomo, Honorable Nyambi. We will now move on, then, honorable members, to the questions and executive response. So the basic question that was supposed to do basically is to find out if any of the participants have any key questions to raise or any key responses that they may like, in addition to what has been contributed thus far. Are there any questions? Any significant comments over and above what has been said? But let's start with questions. Honorable members, the floor is now open. Are there any questions to any of the MECs? I see Ryder. There's Muletsane, and the Tupoit. In that order. Let's start with Honorable Ryder.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and to the MECs, thank you. Particularly MEC Mamabolo, nice to see you again. At least it smells better where we are today than the last time we met. Was at the Sebo King Treatment Works, I think. So there's a better smell in the air today. MEC, I wanted to just make the point that, saying that 70% of our transport, public transport in Gauteng is made up by taxi transport is certainly not something to be proud of, and that should be something that we're looking to change. The bus system and the train system operating in Gauteng is hopelessly inadequate at this stage and is not serving the majority of our commuters. And as you say, people are left at the hands of the taxis and the taxi operators, which are privately run. And of course, there's issues around subsidization there. And like you yourself said, that some of the price hikes that we've seen, particularly over COVID, when workers have been under financial pressure and financial strain, some of those price hikes have not helped matters and not really assisted the commuters. So just to make that point, 70% is something that we should be working to change, and perhaps some of your ideas on that would be most welcome. MEC, you made a comment that veterans are going to be utilized to do certain things. I'd like you just to expound on that, because it sounded to me like it's a bit of a pre-election employment plan to try and garner a couple of extra votes. If you can just tell us a little bit more around how that's going to happen, that would be most welcome, please. And then, of course, also the crowding at taxi ranks has become the big issue. Now, I hear what you're saying about the fact that marshals have been employed and marshals have been sent out, but we all know that marshals are not always listened to, and their instructions are not always complied with. So can you tell us a little bit about the taxi ranks that are lying either vacant or unused or part completed? And I mean, certainly we can look at things like the Vereniging, the Sedibeng taxi rank that has remained uncompleted since MEC Bawi's days. We can look at the Mall of the South taxi rank that has, because of disputes between different associations, has not been employed yet. So if you can give us an idea of what's being done to improve the situation around taxi ranks, please. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Ryder. Honorable Mletsane.
Ke a leboha modulasetulo, ke lebohele le di-MEC ka di-presentation tsa bona, le minister. Potso ya ka ke lebisitse haholoholo ho MEC Mashinini. Ha o tswa ka toropo o kena ka Andries Pretoria semane, ho na le hiking spot moo. Jwale ke batla ho tseba ho yana hore na hiking spot eo e se le bopalamelo ba di-taxi bo molaong, hobane ke bona le di-taxi tsena tse kgolo di se di fola mono le tsona di palamisa mono hore di tsebe ho tswa ka Bloemfontein. Potso ya ka ya bobedi ho yena MEC Mashinini ke taba ya Mohokare Taxi Association e ke tshepang haholo hore wa tseba ka yona. Di-permit tsa bona di ntse di le matsohong a mongodi wa permit board. Di-court order tsa bona tse ileng tsa tshwanela hore di implementuwe ha di so implementuwe le kajeno lena. Mme ke rata ho tseba ho MEC hore na ba bohole ba boka ho rarolla mathata a mokgatlo wa Mohokare Taxi Association. Ke a leboha modulasetulo.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mletsane. We will now move on to the Honorable Dwight.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Thank you, Chair. Chair, I've got two questions that's directed to the MEC Mamabolo from Gauteng. Firstly, what is the total cost per employee per month? And I'm referring to the taxi marshals that you refer to. That includes their training cost. And secondly, it's no secret that budget cuts took place across the board in South Africa. And we are supposed to save rather than spend while still focusing on safety. MEC government has a bloated wage bill. Why were military veterans appointed to monitor the COVID regulations at schools instead of providing the relevant material to schools to fulfill that duty? And did I hear correct? Did you say that these were permanent employments that took place? If you could just elaborate on the matter. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's start with questions that were raised by Honorable Ryder. So MEC Mamabulo.
I'm raising.
Let's have responses from you, both in relation to what has been raised by Honorable Ryder and the issues that has just been raised by Honorable Dwight.
Chairperson, just before MEC Mamabolo is the Chief Whip here. I'm alerted that the MEC Eastern Cape was in and out, maybe because of connectivity. So he since indicated his availability. So is it not possible to consider that summary from the Eastern Cape and then the questions be responded to?
Yeah, good idea indeed. MEC Tigana, why don't we start with you first before we come back to the questions? Just a high-level summary. MEC Tigana from the Eastern Cape. MEC Tigana from the Eastern Cape.
We have done everything possible, Chair. If not available now, I think I bear with you and
okay. Let's move on to the responses.
I know the comment of Honorable Ryder. Thank you, Chair.
Mama Bulo and response to the tweet and Honorable Ryder.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair NCOP. I would like to say to Honorable Ryder that On Saturday, I'll be in Midvaal. As he said, those that may currently not being well governed. I think, Chair, my point is that the overriding principle around taxi ranks in our province is that for many years, these taxi ranks have not been properly taken care of, and we saw it during COVID-19 and our visits to the ground. This is an area that requires effort from ourselves to improve the conditions at taxi rank. That's an overriding principle. I think our coordination as province and municipalities on the management of taxi ranks, it's an area that we have agreed that we are going to tighten up and improve, involving the taxi industry. So the general situation there, it's acknowledged. There's a very painful reality there that we need to improve the overall coordination management of taxi ranks as a matter of principle. And I think it's an area of requiring high levels of oversight, I guess, from honorable members, so that we can help each other to strengthen oversight on taxi ranks, so that resources by municipalities, by ourselves, could be directed to improving these facilities that really cater for the overwhelming majority of the people. He made an example about Vereeniging in taxi rank. I just want to say to him that we are very much pleased that we announced to the taxi industry and to the people of Mfuleni and Sidibeng that taxi rank, we are partnering with Cathle to build not a taxi rank, but an intermodal state-of-the-art facility. And we've already, as a department, appointed Cathle as an implementing agent to build a state-of-the-art intermodal transport facility, which will include all modes of transport. Taxi ranks, marshals, I think, Honorable Ryder, it's important just to clarify that taxi rank marshals are working in taxi ranks on a daily basis. We have seen their efficiency, their effectiveness, because they are in charge of commuting activities on the ground. And therefore, I would like to assure you that they are being listened to, they are in control, they are doing the work. And I'm very much pleased that as our province, we supported them financially to incentivize them to do the work, because we couldn't leave the lives of people to chance. So we have seen dedication, we have seen good results, and that infrastructure, Honorable Chair, is still there. It's working daily. And we are intending to sustain it as part of focusing on improving management activities at taxi ranks. We are paying, just the question that was raised by Honorable Detroit on this issue, we are paying 3.5 to every taxi rank marshal, and we trained them ourselves. There were no additional costs. It's just the daily stipend, and we benchmarked with a living wage to make sure that we give them an income that will encourage them to save lives of our people. Although the amount in terms of proper living standards is still low, but we did take the living wage benchmark. As a point. The last point is on military veterans, Chair. Without taking your time, the military veterans will be deployed to schools to monitor learner transport compliance. We have employed 536 military veterans that will each be assigned to a set of schools to check learner transport and to protect the learners. This is not an election ploy or anything. It is basically intended that we have got capacity on the ground by our military veterans to do the checks and enforce compliance on the ground. So that extent, Chair, I hope I have covered all the issues. The only one remaining, and I can see, Chair, that you don't have much time for me, but there's the issue of the dominance of taxi industry in the public transport mode. Minister will agree that the overarching policy that we are working on is that in the medium to long term, rail must be the backbone of transport, and in particular public transport, whether freight, whether passenger. But in the policy we are working on is to make rail the most dominant and popular mode of mass transit to transport people. Chair, I have tried my best. If there's any issue, I'll get guidance from you.
No, thank you very much. We'll move on. We'll ask MEC Mashinini to respond to the Bloemfontein taxes and permits that are being kept by the permits board, as
you very
raised
much.
by Honorable Mletsana.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Firstly, there is no tax rank at Old and Presbyterians when you get inside people. There is no tax rank there. What these people are doing, they are coming there, and we keep on monitoring that place every time. We are impounding those that are there and then take them to an impoundment center just to indicate that there is no taxi rank. That's what we are doing. We are impounding them, enforcing the law in that area. That two, on the issue of Mohokari, I think they did not tell you the truth. What is the truth? The truth is that they wanted to have an association. But having that idea of having an association, they did not meet the requirement of how many members should be there to form an association. That's why the department took them to the higher court, and then they lost. Because the implication of giving people that do not meet the requirement, everyone can wake up tomorrow and form an association. And I think it will be a chaos. So the reason why they lost the case on the second round when the department challenges that was that they were not meeting the quota. We are not against anybody to have the permit or establish an association. But in terms of the law, they have to meet a particular quota so that we can move together. We cannot allow people to undermine the law. That's where we are. Thank you very much, Ndate Muletsani. I'm prepared to talk to you on the side and explain to you. Batubana, when they talk to the parliamentarians, they don't tell them the truth. And with me in the department, talk truth straight as to what is happening. Thank you very much. So when I'm Chair, come say so happens.
Honorable Mletsane, I see your hand is up.
No, Chair, is the old one. Thank you. Sorry.
Okay, thank you very much. No, thank you very much. Honorable Dwight, I see your hand is up.
No, it's old hand, Chair.
Old hand, okay, thank you very much. I really ask the table there to please lower their hands when the matter has been attended to. Please do that. Let's try one more time to see if Honorable MEC Tikana is around. Honorable Tikana from the Eastern Cape. No, seems there's no one there. I hope the minister is still with us.
Honorable Chair. Afternoon, Honorable Chair.
Yes.
The lawyer, Chairperson.
Please proceed. Just a short summary.
Okay, I'm struggling with the
can hear you.
Okay,
Just
Chair.
a word or two from yourself.
Okay, Chair, thank you. Chair, let me talk on the impact of COVID-19 on passenger transport. Bus passenger services operating local services in the province are not yet fully operational due to a number of issues. That is, people are still working from home, the employees are elderly. Then there's a rotational work concept still being applied in organizations as well as schools and institutions of higher learning, leading to reduced ridership. Both Eastern Cape is having three bus companies. It's the Algoa bus covering the Nelson Mandela area, Maibuye Transport Corporation, and also the AB 350. Both Algoa Bus Company and Maibuye Transport Corporations closed for a period of 5 weeks from March 2021 in line with the national lockdown regulations. Currently, Algoa Bus Company operates at 80% of its capacity. The department had experienced an impasse with the bus company, which receives government support through the PTOG, wherein they demanded payment for standing kilometers instead of taking advantage of the various offerings from government. With respect to the Maibuye Transport Corporation, the pandemic resulted in the decline in revenue collected due to fewer number of passengers transported and unreliable service rendered to passengers. The trip schedules was also amended due to less passenger demand. At level 2, the transport regulations permitting passenger carrying capacity was amended to 70% for long distance travel and 100% for short distance trips with effect from 18th of August. COVID-19 pandemic continues to be hindrance in ridership. The resurgence of the school second wave in Q3 has negatively affected revenue collection and passengers transported. Although the bus's carrying capacity was 100%, there was still a fewer number of passengers traveling due to COVID-19. On revenue, during 2019-20, it was 25 million. Then on 2020-21, it's the passenger revenue is 15 million. Generally, COVID-19 has impacted the movement of people, and this has had an impact on the load factor with regards to flying community, as many business engagements are conducted virtually. From Tata Airport, which is the only government-owned facility providing commercial air services, the situation is no different. Since the opening of the airport, the current loads are on average of between 20 and 30 passengers per flight, and here has been a small increase since the airport opened after lockdown. The department has supported the public transport industry with an amount of 13 million from PTOG for the procurement of PPEs. We procured 680 times 25 liters of sanitizers, 803 disinfectors, and 600 masks, 270 distance markers, and 2,000 window stoppers, which were distributed to the following: to Algoa, Maibuye, AB 350, and Eastern Cape Bus Operators Councils. We are having 193 taxi associations. On scholar transport programs, the numbers increased when the schools were reopened because of the savings which were realized during the lockdown level 5. We targeted 87,000 learners, but they were increased after the opening to 124,000 learners. But the situation now has still reversed to 103. Those are the issues, Chair, which I thought I wanted to share with the meeting, unless there would be other issues. In conclusion, Chairperson, as a department, we keep monitoring the situation on the ground and provide the necessary support to the industry and stakeholders. We further expect that the infrastructure programs being implemented and those in the planning stages will assist the province's economic recovery initiative. Thanks, Chairperson and honorable members.
Thank you very much. Are there any specific questions to Honorable Tikana? Any questions or comments? No. We'll move on then to see if the minister wants to make any comment. Honorable Minister, any comments? No comments.
I was struggling. I was struggling, Chair, sorry. I was struggling to open.
Okay. I just wanted to know from you, Honorable Minister, if there are any comments given all the inputs that have been made by the various MECs and members of the NCOP. One or two comments, if any. If not, we'll move on.
No, I must express appreciation for the NCOP for convening this briefing to look at the economic impact of COVID-19 pandemic on transport sector and mitigation measures. We have outlined extensive response we have put together as a sector, which constitute our contribution to the economic reconstruction and recovery plan of the country. The briefings by the MEC have demonstrated the collaborative nature of our interventions and the hard work provinces have been doing in mitigating the impact of COVID-19. Indeed, Chair, public transport remains our focal point, both in terms of arresting the spread of infections, but also recovery. This includes our capacity in traffic policing, introducing 24/7 policing hours. We are working closely with all the MECs in making this reality. The work is indeed unfolding in earnest towards the implementation of the ambitious resolutions of the National Taxi Cathle, and members have been very emphatic that we should stay the course and implement the ambitious program. In my initial input, Chair, I elaborated on the impact of the pandemic on the aviation sector. The changing aviation landscape, mostly as a result of COVID pandemic, required us to review our aviation policy, which is what we are doing. And a whole lot of other areas which I will not dwell on, maritime, public transport overall. We have taken to heart some of the issues that have been raised. Please be assured of our commitment to remain vigilant in tackling the adverse effects of COVID-19 in transport. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. Now, honorable colleagues, we will then move on to the closing remarks by the Honorable Jay Mohai. But before he does so, just in case we forget, on the part of the NCOP, an expression of appreciation for the minister to make himself available to address the NCOP and to respond to a variety of issues and questions that were directed at him and his overall team of MECs. But the closing remarks will be done by Mohai. Honorable Mohai, let's move towards closing. Let's listen to your remarks and we'll close.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chairperson of the Council and the Deputy Chair, House Chairpersons, Minister Mbalula, and Honorable MECs.
Chairperson, we can't hear you from the Northwest. It's more than 20 minutes. I can't hear you perfectly. Thank you very much.
Honorable MECs, permanent
just
delegates.
to say to Mletsane, we have moved on. We are now at closing remarks by the chief whip.
Thanks, Chair. Special delegates, allow me, Chair, to join hands with you in expressing appreciation to the Minister of Transport, Minister Fikile Mbalula, and the various MECs for their briefing on the impact of COVID-19 pandemic on transport sector in our country. They have given an account of the measures that our government has put in place to mitigate the impact of the pandemic in the transport, freight and logistics sector, as well as aviation industry. We are encouraged by the appropriate response and elaborate contingencies that sector, under the leadership of the minister and various MECs, have initiated to mitigate the impact of the pandemic on the sector. Since the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, cities across the world have had to enforce massive restrictions on public transport in order to limit transmissions of the virus and ensure safe passage of key workers during the emergency response. Minister Mbalula and MECs have outlined the dire impact of the pandemic to all public transport locations such as public transport and aviation. They have also outlined how the pandemic has resulted in enormous job losses, with many operators such as AXA, PRASA, Autopack having no choice but to scale down on their operations. Sadly, some operators are facing completely shut down due to less viable routes due to reduction of passengers. The social impact are undoubtedly significant, while those with access to private cars might enjoy uncharacteristically quiet roads. For poorer households that depend on shared transport being denied, motorized travel for months could have disastrous consequences. Most low-income residents will have no choice but to walk or cycle, and I must indicate there's a poor infrastructure regarding cycle in our country, which continuously need to improve. But with added curfews and outdoor time limits, access to work and social services are likely to be severely impeded. Chairperson, research shows that discretionary consumer spending may decline by between 40 to 50%, translating into 10% decline in gross domestic product, with numerous second and third order effects such as reduction in tax collection. The most immediate and visible effect of this is a massive reduction in revenue for the government to continue with the national agenda to deliver quality services to our people. Bold measures and decisive interventions are required to respond to the pandemic, while also ensuring decisive interventions to forge ahead with creating strategic partnership with measures to weather the COVID-19 storm. We want to reassure the minister and all MECs of our support in rallying all sectors of society to ensure that the pandemic doesn't reverse the gains that we have made in reversing the legacy of underdevelopment, especially poor infrastructure in our communities, and providing our people with reliable and safe public transport. Once more, we want to thank you for sharing this valuable information with us. It will be used continuously through our oversight in terms of probing further some of the issues that has been shared with us. thanks the most. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Chief Whip. Honorable members, we have come to the end of this special briefing session. And on the note on which the Chief Whip concluded, until we meet again. But at this point, I wish to declare this briefing closed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you
Thank
very
you,
much.
Chair.
Very much,
Thank you,
Chair.
Chair.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable
very
Member.
much.
Long
Thank
live
you.
the
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Long live the chair.
Honorable Sylvia. Thank you very much, Honorable Sylvia.
Bangwenya.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, Sylvia. May num nam.
No mandla.
Ewe. Honorable Kenny.
Okay, Mawina. Okay, Mawini.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Chair.
Is the meeting still on?
No,
Hello?
go and rest.
For more than 20 minutes. I was not hearing you.
Yeah, it's over. You can rest now. Rest, Chief.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much, my leader.
Thank you, Chief Whip. Chief Whip. Thank you, Will.
Yes, Advocate, I'm trying to move some people.
Yeah.
We still have a few.
I'm supposed to be on leave, but I'm here. It's the same issue that we had since the beginning of this week. We started late again because of ICT systems. So we started 10 minutes late with the streaming and recording. Thank you.
Cathle? Cathle or Eugene? ICT?
Are they?
Do we have problems? We still have problems.
I will have to follow up with my colleagues who started this session. I think I only took over at 4 o'clock, so I will have to get feedback from them.
We're still streaming on YouTube. And I had taken the Parliament streaming out, Advocate.